Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto built a massive harem with Yugao and more? Part 1. 4-year-old Naruto didn't know how he got here. All he remembers was running from a group of angry children who saw him talking to a lonely redhead that could control sand. He ran for what seemed like hours, running toward the outskirts of the village. He had tripped over a large rock, fell down into a ravine and into a tunnel way. It was there that he stumbled upon a door. It had a picture of a red scorpion and looked like it hadn't been opened in years. Injured and angry with those asshole kids, he pushes the door open with a scowl. He would get back at them later. He looks down a long dimly lit hallway and sees yet another door at the end of it. He makes his way over to it. Whoa! Was all he could say when he lays eyes on what was in the room. There were body parts, tools, weapons and scrolls all over the place. The body parts were made of strong wood. He looks around confused until he spots an old journal. It was sitting on a small worn-out desk and had a black cover with a drawing of a red scorpion on it. It obviously hadn't been used in years. He slowly makes his way over to it and flips through a few pages before realizing that the journal contained a single message. A mere paragraph of words. He reads the message with a raised eyebrow. I am known as Sasori of the Red Sands. That is all you need to know about me. My age is timeless. My prowess is unprecedented. My power will be unrivaled. I am the master of the puppet techniques, killer of a cage, soon to be immortal. I have delved deep within techniques that all others have feared to tread. I have left this room as a taunt to you arrogant Suna shinobi. Haha, no doubt someone will stumble upon this room and use the puppets here to strengthen their own, and I have left the means to do so. And for that Suna you had better be thankful. Naruto smirks and drops the journal. Not at all impressed with this Sasori's little message. Too bad I'm not from Suna. Stupid Sasori Tem. He walks over to a simple-looking scroll and picks it up. I'll become greater than even you. Stuck-up bastard, he says with a frown as he looks at what the title said. Basic puppeteer exercises. Naruto raises an eyebrow and continued to read. What he found intrigued him. Apparently Sasori used this room exclusively when he created his puppets and even as he trained as a rookie puppeteer. He spent countless hours reading through the scrolls of this room, and now it would be Naruto's turn. His interest grew by the second. He learned that in order to control the puppet one required the skill to create chakra strings and complex finger movements. There were instructions at the bottom for beginners. He spent the next couple of days practicing the finger movements and the chakra exercises needed to create chakra strings. It went well despite his apparent lack of chakra control. After he had more or less perfected the chakra string, he went on to the next step of learning how to become a puppeteer. He had to learn how to attach the chakra strings to an object and make it move. This was a lot more difficult than creating chakra strings. He quickly learned that he needed to increase his control over chakra if he wanted to accomplish this goal. He spent 2 weeks doing so when yet another scroll was revealed to have several different chakra exercises described in it. Naruto didn't know what compelled him to continue reading the scrolls on puppets or why he even spent so much time learning the steps to learn the technique, but he did. He just kept on reading through the scrolls, learning from the instructions left behind by some unknown shinobi of Suna. Completely unaware of the power he was granting himself. 3 weeks went by and Naruto had succeeded in making an arm on the wall move and launch a barrage of Senbon. He had even managed to use the arm to hunt. He was coming along quickly. His skill growing every day. By the end of the 4th week he was able to walk up and down the walls using his chakra. He was able to quickly and efficiently create and attach chakra strings to the puppet parts and bring them to life. He even had a pretty good grasp of what movements moved what on the puppet. He grins and opens his current scroll a bit further, proceeding to the next step. Step 22: Creating your own puppet. Naruto grins. He didn't know it was even possible to create his own puppet. Then again, it should have been obvious. He read through the instructions on how to use the various tools needed to assemble a puppet of his own. Various screwdrivers, oils, mallets, hammers, and even a blowtorch lie about the room waiting to be used. Naruto grins again and looks around. There were various torsos, arms, legs, a few heads, a lot of different weapons including a large zanbeitu and even some hair. He takes it all in, deciding what to use. He finally settles on a torso that would belong on a young teen, the large zanbeitu and a large ball of yellow hair. 2 months went by. Naruto was covered in oil, dirt and sand. This was by far the hardest thing he had ever indulged in. Creating a puppet was something that took skill and time. He was up for most of the 2 months working on his custom puppet. Hey, I hope Hokage Gigi isn't too worried about me, he says to himself as he makes the final adjustments to his puppet. The rate at which Naruto learned the techniques in the scrolls could have been described as prodigious. His brain soaked up the info with ease and efficiency. It was as if something within him provided him with the right type of deducing skills needed to learn quickly. He didn't focus on that though. He was currently reading yet another scroll as he tightened the joints and various other parts on his puppet. This one was a human anatomy scroll. He didn't really understand why a scroll such as this one would be in a room like this, but he figured if it was there then he perhaps should study that as well. Ah, finally, says an excited Naruto as he finishes his puppet. It was a near-perfect replica of himself, only about 1.5 feet taller. He had the same blue eyes and wild yellow hair. He even had 6 whisker marks on his cheeks. His jaw was segmented so it could open wide enough for various projectiles such as kunai shuriken and senbon needles. The left forearm was a wide cylinder that held senbon and poison gas, while the left arm split in half and a spinning demon wind shuriken attached to a rod extended out. On its back was the large zanbeitu and a long fox tail. The tail was segmented and covered in yellow hair. It was twice as long as the puppet as tall. It held shuriken, kunai and senbon, all dipped in a powerful poison he discovered near the back of the room. It was dressed in a tattered black cloak. That's all he had to work with at the moment, but he planned on changing that. He flexes his fingers and attaches the chakra strings to the puppet to test out his kill and its maneuverability. It immediately comes to life with various clicking sounds. Naruto moves his fingers a bit and the puppet slowly rises to its feet. He grins at his creation. He does a few test movements, causing the puppet to take a couple of steps forward. He smiles. Not bad for his first time. I'll call you Fox Naruto, he says as he pockets the anatomy scroll. The puppet clicks a few times. Naruto smiles and looks around the room. There was so much he still needed to learn. He knew that. He wanted to learn. He craved it. He walks over to the back of the room, his new puppet, Fox Naruto, taking clumsy steps toward him as Naruto continued to move his fingers and control it. Naruto scans the room and spots a pair of scrolls. He grabs them and looks at the titles. One was labeled "Storing Your Puppets in Seals," while the other was labeled "Forbidden." Intrigued, Naruto opens the seal scroll first. Here are the instructions on storing your puppets, it read. Naruto looks down and there was a drawing of one seal. It was quite simple really. It merely required a few complex designs and the kanji for what you were storing in that seal. Naruto grins and pockets the scroll. That would come in handy in the future. He then looks at the other scroll in his hand and frowns. Something that said "Forbidden" on it just didn't emanate a friendly aura. But it's still. He said he was going to surpass Sasori and that's what he intended to do. He could learn whatever was listed in this scroll. This forbidden scroll held the instructions to create a puppet made from a human corpse. In all of its gory detail. Naruto had never read anything so grotesque in his life. Hell, some of the treatment of the villagers weren't as gross as this. He continued to read, drinking in the info and subconsciously storing it within his mind. He learned that in order to create a human puppet he needed a lot of preservatives and a place to get rid of the organs. It was sick yet interesting at the same time. The more he read, the more he learned. For instance, he learned that a human puppet retains the abilities of the person used for the process. This included bloodline limits. He also learned that human puppets are a bit more durable than regular puppets. He pockets the scroll with a smile. He just might use this technique on some of his enemies. Naruto grabs a few more instruction scrolls and heads back toward the center of the room. Fox Naruto following. He looks around with a smile at all the leftover puppet parts, vials of liquid poison and tools. He grabs the tools, some of the jars of poisons and as much weapons as he could hold and puts them in his backpack along with all the scrolls and instructions. He looks around the room one last time and smiles. It was nearly completely cleaned out and Naruto's backpack was stuffed beyond its limits. Sasori of the Red Sands. I thank you very much, he says as he exits the room. I promise to be the greatest puppet ninja ever. And with that, Naruto Uzumaki and Fox Naruto leave the old lab of Sasori of the Red Sands and heads back into Suna to meet with Sarutobi. Scene change. Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, was panicking. It had been nearly 3 whole months since Naruto had vanished. He was supposed to be back in Konoha 2 weeks ago. But he wasn't about to leave the blonde boy. He knew Naruto must have gotten caught up in something. Especially after the young boy by the name of Gaara informed him that Naruto was chased away by a group of mean kids because he had said hi to him and said his sand was cool. Sarutobi could still feel the happiness that was radiating from the redhead. The poor boy was living a life just like Naruto, it seemed. Suddenly a series of clicking behind him causes him to spin around. What he sees causes him to gasp. Naruto? He asks. Nay, I'm right here, Hokage Gigi. That's Fox Naruto. Sarutobi turns to the left and sees none other the Uzumaki Naruto standing on a boulder in front of him. His clothing was torn and dirty and his eyes were half closed. He was grinning with his arm extended and his fingers twitching and jerking. Sarutobi turns back to Fox Naruto and examines it closely. He gasps a second later. Like it, Hokage Gigi. I created it myself. It was awesome. I found this old puppet room and learned from the scrolls there. Naruto has his puppet leap over the Hokage and take its position next to Naruto. Sarutobi was speechless. Naruto had learned a Suna technique to this level in a mere 3.5 months. It was unheard of. On top of that, he had created his own puppet. Naruto, cool huh? Now I dare any stupid villagers to mess with me. Naruto leaps down to face the Hokage with a tired smile. Without another word, the two then make their way to the exit of Sunagakure. Neither of them notices a small reed head spying on them from a tree with sad smile. The boy sighs sadly before vanishing in a swirl of sand. Time skip. Naruto ran straight home as soon as he entered the village. A large scroll bouncing on his small back as he bounded through the village. Courtesy of Sarutobi, who told him that walking through the village with a bag full of puppet parts, weapons, poisons and instruction scrolls would rouse the bloodlust of the already bloodthirsty villagers. He had sealed everything including Fox Naruto in that scroll for him. Naruto vowed to learn how to do that as well. He ignored the hate-filled glares and jeers thrown his way as he made his way toward his home. All of his anger and resentment gone for the moment. Replaced by excitement. For just this moment, he burst into his apartment room and drops the scroll to the ground. He bites his thumb and swipes the blood across the kanji for seal. A sizable burst of smoke and a large pile of everything he had taken from Sasori's room was in front of him. He grins and grabs Fox Naruto and places him in his chair. He then grabs all of the scrolls and puts them in a pile at the foot of his bed. Next are all the weapons. He had actually managed to stuff quite a few in his backpack before Sarutobi sealed them. 3 katanas, about 600 senbon needles, 80 shuriken, 100 kunai, 2 large demon wind shuriken, a pair of broad swords, a chain whip, a chain scythe, an extendable spear and 10 wicked curved daggers made up the pile. Next were the puppet pieces. There wasn't much, seeing as Naruto didn't want to be using Sasori's parts, but there were some essentials. 3 heads, 2 torsos and a set of arms and legs and 6 bottles of purple poison. He would make his own parts in the future. Last were the tools. The hammer, screwdrivers, the drills, the blowtorch. Everything he would need in order to build a puppet. Almost everything. He needed more tools and supplies. An issue he would address later. There was also that scroll on human puppets. Should he do such a thing? Turn someone into a puppet? For now he didn't have an answer. Worry about that later. I got work and training to do. He thought excitably. Over the next 6 years, Naruto became an enigma. He completely enthralled himself in the studies of the puppeteer and hardly left his apartment. He worked tirelessly day and night getting stronger. Sasori's message was taped to his wall, taunting him, forcing him to grow stronger. He completely isolated himself from the civilization that scorned him so terribly. He never once created another puppet, but he did create several different installations for Fox Naruto. Controlling the puppet became second nature. So well developed that it looked like the puppet possessed a life of its own. Naruto hardly had to move anything to get the puppet to follow his commands. He spent countless hours reading through the scrolls, learning constantly, and it seemed the more he learned, the more possibilities that revealed themselves. The art of the puppeteer was truly a treasure to discover. His skill skyrocketed. By the end of his second year he was able to control numerous items at once, one for every finger. This alone meant that Naruto could control Fox Naruto with a single finger. Over the years his apartment became a spitting image of Sasori's room. Homemade puppet parts, weapons and tools hung on nearly every inch of the wall. He took to growing herbs for his poisons and even had a little forge in his kitchen floor, and since he lived on the top floor no one really noticed any smoke. He ventured out every once in a while and stole whatever he could get his hands on. Food, clothing and materials fell to his chakra strings. Sarutobi had taught him numerous funin jutsu. This included the one that stored items into scrolls, something that the blonde was greatly happy for. Naruto also began to study weapons. He figured that having all these items around and not be able to use them would be pointless. He took to sparring with Fox Naruto in order to learn them to a decent degree. Currently his favorite weapon was the chain scythe. Naruto trained intensely every day. He forged some makeshift weights and drew some seals on them that could store chakra and use it to increase the weight holding him down, and practiced daily routines every morning. This consisted of push-ups, punches, kicks and hanging from the ceiling upside down using chakra. It was a sloppy, unorthodox routine, but it was doing wonders for the boy. He learned much. Between living alone and furiously training to be the greatest puppeteer, he had to learn these things. This included cooking, cleaning, sewing and even hairdressing. He was never out of things to do. Another aspect of his training was the knowledge of the human body. Not a day goes by that he didn't read a bit of that book. It was always with him. This book provided him with a vast amount of understanding. It helped him with his puppetry skills very much. It also gave him the knowledge he needed in case he decided to create a human puppet. For 6 years no one had heard a single word about Naruto. They knew he holed himself up in his apartment, but no one really cared. Just so long as the demons stayed out of their sight. That is until the 10th celebration of Kyuubi's defeat. That was when everything changed. Time skip. Like any other night, 10-year-old Naruto Uzumaki was nose-deep in a scroll and tinkering with Fox Naruto's tail. He had shortened it after about 2 years. Now he was drawing a few more weapons, storing seals and making his routine check-up of the joints, latches and openings for the numerous contraptions hidden on the tail. He was lost in his own world of human anatomy and puppet maintenance when it happened. Crash. Bam. It came so suddenly Naruto didn't have time to react. A brick smashes through his window and bashes him in the head. At the same time his door is kicked in and about 20 villagers burst into the room wielding sake bottles, knives, planks, and stones. Also 3 ninja came in through the broken window. 2 chunin and an anbu. Naruto's head was killing him and blood was gushing from the split in his skull. He groans. The group pauses when they see the assortment of items in the room. The lead villager voices his opinion. What kind of sick practices are you doing in here, demon? He lifts up a puppet head and tosses it across the room. A woman cringes. It looks like he was practicing for when he really decides to sat his bloodlust. The villagers and the 3 ninja glare. Well, we won't let that happen now, will we? Asks the Anbu in a female's voice. There was a loud cheer of, hell no. Before they all surge forward at the still dazed and confused Naruto. Fox Naruto being thrown to the side. The villagers pounded upon Naruto's prone form without mercy. They kept shouting things like, time to finish what the 4th started. And, we've let you live long enough. You thought you were safe in this apartment. For what seemed like hours they attacked the boy who for the most part still didn't know what was going on. He could feel the pain, hear the taunts and decipher how many there were, but he still didn't know how or when this attack had started. It was relentless. And it brought back the memories of his earlier childhood. Blood poured from nearly every part of his body. Gashes and broken bones decorated the boy's entire body. He passes out just as the beating stops and he is hoisted up by his underarms. Naruto's mind. Naruto sighs and gets to his feet. He looks around with a sad but angry smile. His eyes scan the area. Where the hell did they dump me this time? He says as he takes in the pale yellow glow of his surroundings. He also notices that the ground was covered in ankle-deep murky water. A sewer. How original. He deadpans as he begins to look for an exit. He rounds a corner and takes off down the hall. He comes to another corner and sees a red glow. Must be sunrise, he says as he rounds the corner. What he sees was not the glow of the sun rising. It instead was a gigantic gate with a paper seal on the front of it. The red glow was emanating from inside. Naruto raises an eyebrow. Hilu www. A pair of huge red eyes suddenly snaps open. This causes Naruto to yelp and leap back. A deep growl so menacing it nearly causes the sewer walls to nearly fall apart erupts from behind the bars as massive fanged grin reveals itself in the darkness. Then there was a voice. It was terrible, deep and menacing. The voice of a creature that reveled in destruction. So, you have finally come here, you pathetic human boy. What is it that you want from me? Naruto stares wide-eyed at the beast. Unable to say anything, a set of massive claws suddenly slams into the bars. Answer me, mortal. Naruto snaps out of it almost instantly. His eyes harden and he stares at the beast with anger and hate. Listen, I don't know who think you are and I don't care. I've been beaten and tossed into this godforsaken sewer by a bunch of blind Konoha bastards. I don't have time to be fucking around with you. Now tell me how to get the hell out of here. The beast is silent for a couple of minutes until it laughs. A deep rumbling laughter that echoed all throughout the yellow sewers. Ha ha ha. You must be my jailer. I admire you guts, brat. Even if you are an insolent whelp. Naruto raises an eyebrow. Jailer. What are you talking about, beast? The beast's grin grows as he speaks again. It does not surprise me that you do not know. Ha ha, humans are such simple creatures. Perhaps that is why I enjoy feasting on their marrow so much. Tell me, boy, what do you know of the Kyuubi no Kitsune? Scene change. Sarutobi was walking through the village, enjoying the festival. He was in a great mood. This was a day he didn't have to worry about paperwork. All around him there was activity. Everyone was celebrating the defeat of the Kyuubi no Kitsune 10 years ago. This brought him to another thought. Naruto Uzumaki hadn't shown up to visit him in a year. He hoped the boy was alright. It wouldn't be until the next day that he would become aware of the situation unfolding in the slums of Konoha. Scene change. The villagers, the shinobi and the residents of the apartment complex were gripped by a terror that they haven't known in 10 years. 3 minutes ago the female Anbu was smirking with her katana poised to strike. That was 3 minutes ago. Before an unbelievably powerful red chakra exploded from the boy's body and his eyes turned red and demonic. What the hell? The demon. It's escaping. Screams the Chunin a second before the power dies out and the boy glares with a look of contempt and hate. Okay everyone, we need to talk. Now. Naruto jams his clawed hand into the chest of the villager who was stupid enough to still be holding him and rips out his still beating heart. You bastards sealed the Kyuubi no Kitsune within my navel in order to save this place and you still treat me like trash. The man dies and the rest of the group is now desperately searching for an escape route. I'm a hero here if this is true. If the Kyuubi is indeed sealed within my body, then I am the only one capable of keeping the beast at bay. He takes a step towards the group and they step back. All except the Anbu. Naruto turns his gaze toward the door where a few people were trying to inch out. And you bastards ignore that rule and make my life a living hell. He raises his hand and attaches a chakra string to the door and pulls it shut, trapping the people inside. Alone. With him. Why is that? And it better be the right answer. He turns his gaze toward the Anbu. Tears beginning to form in his eyes. He raises his other hand and S-string of crimson chakra shots out and connects to Fox Naruto. The Anbu gasps when the puppet comes to life and glides over to its controller. He jerks his finger and the puppet draws its Zanbeitu. One of the villagers decides to answer his question. He sneers and steps forward. We treat you the way you deserve to be treated, monster. We know what you really are. The fact that your eyes are like that is proof enough. That boy was dead the moment you took him over, Kyuubi. Naruto's teary eyes harden and without a word and a slight movement of his finger, Fox Naruto lunges and cleaves the man in half with its Zanbeitu. The Anbu gasps because the puppet moved at speeds that rivaled an elite Jonin. She didn't have time to think though, because with another movement the puppet's tail suddenly splits into 4 sections and wave after wave of Senbon needles and kunai flew from it, killing the 2 Chunin and half of the group. Naruto shows no sign of remorse as he has his puppet lunge again, slashing and hacking the group of people apart with ease and brutality. They tried to run. They tried to scream. They failed. They were doomed. And the entire time this was happening, Naruto stared down the Anbu woman. Tears streaming down his face. Wrong answer, he says as the last villager falls to Naruto's puppet. The Anbu glares and tightens the grip on her katana as the puppet rejoins Naruto at his side. Going to kill me next? Save the challenge for last? She asks. Naruto glares and his eyes return to normal. The red haze around him receding into his seal and the chakra string attached to Fox Naruto turning blue. He twitches his finger and the puppet suddenly spews a cloud of purple mist at the woman from its mouth. She didn't have time to react and the mist was inhaled. What the? Naruto speaks again as he approaches the staggering woman. His voice normal again. I will not kill you. This time. He draws his own katana and lops off the woman's arm without a second thought. She screams out, but her senses were too messed up by now for her to do anything about it. Return to Hokage Gigi and let him know that I am Naruto Uzumaki, puppet master of Konoha, jailer for the Kyuubi no Kitsune. My age is 10. My prowess will be unprecedented. My skill will be unrivaled. He reaches down and yanks the mask from the woman's face, revealing beautiful brown eyes and long purple hair. Tell Hokage Gigi that anyone who crosses me from now on will meet a terrible end and become one of my tools. The woman looks up with clouded vision, clutching the bloody stump of her arm. I will not put up with anyone's crap anymore. Not after what has just been revealed to me, says Naruto as he picks up the woman bridal style. I am Naruto Uzumaki. And those who cross me will be turned into my tools. He then leaps out of his window with the woman in his arms. 2 days later, Sarutobi could be seen sitting at his desk on the verge of tears as he and the now one-armed woman watched through his crystal ball, as Naruto began the process of turning his would-be attackers into human puppets. Hokage-sama, why did he spare me? Asks the woman. Sarutobi sighs and gives the woman a mild glare. I do not know Yugao. Especially since you should have been the first one he killed. Yugao looks down in shame. I know. You should have thought before you acted. You listened to those villagers far too much and now an entire apartment complex worth of Konoha citizens has been lost. Yugo's head bows down even further. I'm sorry. Sarutobi sighs and puts a hand on the woman's shoulder. I am not the one you should apologize to. Yugo looks up with teary eyes. I'll find a way to let him know. I promise Hokage-sama. Sarutobi smiles. Good. And who knows? He may even return your arm someday. Yugo smiles a bit as she returns to watching Naruto. Hokage-sama, just where did he learn the puppet technique? Sarutobi smiles and says, I took him to Suna. He learned it there. I see. Still, human puppets. Just who did he learn from? Sarutobi gazes into the ball and sighs. He learned from the leftover findings of an infamous former shinobi of Suna. Do you mean? Yes. Naruto Uzumaki stumbled upon the old training grounds of Sasori of the Red Sands. I only hope that Naruto do not emulate the man too much. Yugo could only nod. 5 months later, the apartment complex came back to life. But there was one key difference. The people that now guarded the now large home of Naruto Uzumaki were no longer alive. Their arms and legs were segmented and their skin was the color of stained wood. They wielded numerous weapons and wooden hands built into the building at numerous points controlled them with the help of a layer of chakra-storing seals, sensor seals and security seals. They had become Naruto's guards. His tools. His security puppets. Hey. Anyone who gets too close to this place now, better be on guard. Those seals pick up on chakra and ill intent. The second they get within 2 feet of this place, my puppets will attack. Naruto smirks and flops down into his bed. Fox Naruto clicking a few times before becoming silent and dropping to the floor. For the first time in a long time, Naruto Uzumaki felt safe. He closes his eyes as visions of stronger human puppets began to dance around in his mind. I wonder if Sasori is still alive. If so, then he better be prepared for the day we meet. I might make him my tool if he isn't careful. Naruto falls asleep with this thought. An obsession beginning to form in his 10-year-old mind. This brat is an interesting one. I never knew one could do such a thing as turn a living creature into a lifeless tool. And it appears he aspires to turn all of his greatest enemies into these tools. Let's see if you accomplish this goal, boy. The Kyuubi then closes his eyes, resuming its long slumber. A year went by without much incident since that day. No one dared approach Naruto's home after Sarutobi had spread the boy's message. Well, almost no one. The few that disregarded Naruto's warning soon fell to his ingenious traps and puppets. The name Naruto became an infamous one in Konoha. The council was enraged at Naruto's boldness but soon found they too could do nothing about it. Sarutobi had made it perfectly clear that Naruto is not be harmed. There was also the fact that his traps were dangerous enough to take out an Anbu. And they only seemed to be getting more intricate and dangerous. Civilians and shinobi alike had stories to tell about the infamous puppet house, as many came to call it, using it to scare their children in order to keep them inside at night and causing a few people to wallow even further in their hate. Naruto left his place even less than before after that day. Not even Sarutobi had seen much of the boy. It made him sad to know that a village such as Konoha could do that kind of thing to a child. It hurt him deeply. Scene change. Yugao was doing her daily patrol through Konoha like any other day, only she was lost in thought. She had always been so since that day. She unconsciously touches the stump where her left arm used to be in size. That day flashed through her mind constantly. That day she nearly stabbed him with that sword, and the day that he looked at her with those deep red demonic eyes that held more sadness and pain than any human she had seen. It was at that moment that she realized her mistake. Or perhaps it was when he spared her life and dropped her off at the hospital, taking only an arm as punishment. She sighs and says one word. A word that was meant for only her but was picked up by her partner and caused him to raise an eyebrow. Naruto. Is that the guy who took your arm? Asks Gecko Hayate with kind eyes. Yugao nods, slightly surprised that the man heard her. He's a young boy who has been done a great injustice. Hayate nods. He's that puppeteer boy, right? The one everybody talks about. Yes. Hayate looks up in thought for a few minutes as the two continued to walk. He was so silent for a few minutes that Yugao was getting a little impatient. Finally he smiles and says, "Go see him." Yugao nearly trips over her own foot. "What? I can't do that." "Why not?" asks Hayate. Yugao looks at the man with a bit of a glare. Naruto is an infamous word in Konoha for a reason. I'm not risking those traps of his. Hayate frowns a bit and says, "I think you're just scared to face him." "What? You told me yourself. Naruto took your arm a year back. You also said something about a great injustice. I'm guessing that you were part of this injustice and that's why your arm is missing. This draws me to conclude that you're afraid of what he'll say if you were to finally apologize to him." Yugao looks at Hayate and mentally curses him. His deducting skills were too good for his own damn well-being. "Fine. I'm afraid to face him. It is well known that Naruto is distant from other people. And he very well should be," says Hayate. Yugao nods, but it's not just that. Naruto has been forced to resort to killing at such a young age. He trusts no one and he's quicker to add to his puppet collection than he is to listen. All valid points. You are absolutely right, says Hayate. Yugao was going to say something else but was cut off by the man next to her. "But you forget one simple thing, Yugao Uzuki." "Oh yeah, what's that?" Hayate smiles and puts a hand on her shoulder. "Naruto spared your life that day. He must have some bit of faith in you. Somewhere." And with that he leaps away. Scene change. Sarutobi sighs as he straightens out his robes and walks down a hall. He was not looking forward to this. No, not looking forward at all. The council had summoned for him a few minutes ago and he already knew for what reason. He approaches that door and pushes it open. He is met with the gazes of every council member in the room. Their faces were emotionless and frozen, but their eyes betrayed what they were feeling. And Sarutobi didn't like what he was seeing. "Ah, Hokage-sama, it is good of you to join us. Would you like some coffee?" asks his old female teammate. Sarutobi takes his seat but turns down the coffee. He decides to get right to the point and address the situation. "I'm guessing you all have called this meeting to discuss Naruto?" he asks. One of the council members chuckle. She was a rather attractive woman of about 40 years of age. She was dressed in a red kimono and had jet black hair. "My Hokage-sama, impatient aren't we?" she asks. Sarutobi gives her a piercing look and says, "Just answer the question." A man sitting to the left of him snorts a bit before speaking. "Hokage-sama, was all know how fond you are of that boy and we know how great his potential is. And," says an impatient Hokage, "it's just that we feel that the boy is not stable enough to be allowed to live. We've seen Orochimaru and Itachi. We cannot have another one of those." Sarutobi could feel high anger rising as he comes to a conclusion. And it only rose higher once his conclusion was solidified. "We know you care for that boy despite his demon heritage, but he cannot be allowed to live." Hiyashi Hyuga, clan head of the Hyuga clan and member of the council, stands up with a smirk. "That is why we have come to a decision to eliminate the boy." Sarutobi's eyes widen. "You sent assassins?" They nod. But not just any assassins. Hiyashi-sama has sent a team of highly trained Hyugas to deal with him. Nothing will get by their eyes. By now Sarutobi was growling. They should be arriving at their destination right about now, says the black-haired woman. Sarutobi slams his fist into the table. You fools. Do you know what the fuck you have done? The council recoils a bit, and then explodes into a mass of undignified yelling. Scene change. There were 4 of them. Highly trained. Highly skilled and highly pumped for this job. But nothing in the entire world of shinobi could have prepared them for this. No. Hiyashi had told them that the target's house was riddled with very dangerous traps. What they were not told and what Hiyashi apparently didn't know was that the target's home was one big trap. They spent an hour alone trying to get inside the house, then another 30 minutes trapped in the hallway. They had been scraped and cut several times, and those human dolls moved with the skills and speed of some elite ninja. Explosion seals tested their chitons to the limits, and poison gases tested their ability to hold their breath for minutes at a time. They were sweaty. They were tired and they were angry. This boy's skills in traps was almost unparalleled, and it had them unnerved and on edge. They pressed forward though. Byakugans on full blast so they could at least anticipate the springing of the traps Naruto had set. Hell, if it weren't for Byakugan they would already be dead. Finally they make it to the top floor and to a door marked Uzumaki and push. It didn't budge. Damn it. Growls the leader as he pushes again. It still didn't budge. The 4 gaze at the door with their bloodline limits and notice that the door is packed full of chakra. An odd thing, but they didn't really see anything else. This kid's good, I'll give him that, but chakra enforced items are useless against a Hyuga, says the leader as he pumps his own chakra into his palms and slams it into the door. What happens next though made the 4 realize just why the door was packed full of chakra. The door splits apart into 4 sections, swings inward, and about 20 metallic tentacles shoot from the opening and snatch up the Hyugas, pulling them into the void. They felt themselves being pulled down. Further and further underground. Past the 2nd floor. Past the 1st floor. Past the basement until finally they are dropped into what looked like a large dojo. Confused and still shaken, the 4 Hyugas get to their feet and watch as the tentacles recede back into the ceiling. They were getting ready to ask where the hell they were when someone speaks up. It was a voice devoid of emotion and feeling, and it was a voice that belonged to a child. You guys must be pretty good to make it this far. But you die now. I hope Hokage Gigi understands why. The Hyugas all whirl around to the source of the voice and gasp at what they see. That was right before the walls, doors, and floor were covered in iron bars, and several tubes jutted from the ceilings and began to spew out green gas. They didn't have any time to do much else as the gas hit them and they are almost instantly paralyzed. Naruto approaches the 4 downed Hyugas wearing a special mask that kept him from being affected. He had them trapped. No one enters my place and leaves it alive. Unless I want them to. He then draws his katana and swings. Half-hour later. Yugao was standing in front of Naruto's home trying to find the best way to approach it without getting filleted by his puppet's guards. She had looked all around the former apartment complex but still couldn't find a decent way in. She contemplated just going in the front since it looked like the traps there had already been activated. There were even a few broken puppets. Finally, after a few more minutes, she takes a deep breath and decides to walk calmly up to the front door. Bam! What the hell? Screams Yugao as the front door is suddenly blasted out and nearly takes her head off. She had to bend completely backwards in order to avoid the flying piece of wood. A task that had her back screaming in protest. She gets back to her feet and brushes a bit of dust out of her eyes. What the hell was that? She says as she focuses her attention back at Naruto's front doorway. She gasps at what she sees. Naruto emerges from the doorway with an expressionless face. His wild blonde hair tied up in a waist-long ponytail. Yugao notices that he had grown little taller. his deep blue eyes having gained the attributes of a seasoned warrior. Someone that has killed numerous times. His muscles were coiled and defined, ready to spring into action at a moment's notice. He was dressed in a pair of baggy torn-up orange shorts and an open orange jacket. A bloody katana was held in his hand and a battle chain was wrapped several times around his waist. He looked quite handsome for an 11-year-old boy. Yugao could only gape as the boy walked past her carrying a severely slashed-up dead Hyuga on his shoulders, and behind him was his signature puppet fox Naruto dragging two more bodies behind it by the feet. The puppet had changed the most. It no longer stood upright. It was now hunched over into a crouching position and walked like the antiform in Kingdom Hearts 2. The large Zanbeitu was still strapped to its back and its hair was still bright yellow, but now it had a pair of red fox ears and clawed hands. It was dressed in an orange and blue yakuta and now had 9 red tails instead of 1 yellow one. Yugao couldn't help but think of the Kyuubi at that moment. Assassins, says Naruto plainly as he passes by the Anbu woman. She merely nods without thinking and lets him continue his way toward the Hokage Tower. She could say nothing. Her entire being racked with guilt for having a hand in turning Naruto into what he is today. She could only say one thing as he disappeared around a corner and scared the hell out of the villagers nearby. Naruto. Scene change. Naruto briefly acknowledged the presence of the Anbu woman as he passed by her. He had other things to attend to, such as getting to Hokage Gigi and asking him why there are assassins coming at him. Not that he cared, especially given the nature of the assassins. It only meant a powerful new puppet. He ignored the frightened cries of the villagers or the shouts from the shinobi as he made his way toward the Hokage Tower, dragging the bodies of 3 dead Hyugas behind him. Scene change. The council room was in a complete state of disarray and chaos. As soon as Sarutobi had called them all fools, they exploded into a jumbled mess of outrage and denial. Hokage-sama, you can't possibly believe that the boy is capable of killing 4 highly trained Hyugas. Yells Hiyashi. I agree. No matter how good his traps may be, he still does not have the skill to take them on and win. The Byakugan can see through all. They'll be able to anticipate and avoid the freak's traps, and once they get to the boy itself, then they'll easily deal with him. Sarutobi sighs and says, Naruto Uzumaki is not the type of person to slack off. Even before that incident a year ago, he was a determined, hard-working, intelligent boy. Naruto won't grow weak in other areas while his puppetry shoots through the roof. I can almost guarantee that his trap-setting abilities aren't the only things to improve over that time. He'll be evenly skilled in every aspect of combat. Another council member snorts. Even so, Hokage-sama, those 4 Hyugas are at Anbu level. Even if the boy has improved, he still is no match for them. Hokage-sama, you place too much faith in the boy. I cannot understand why it is that you even protect him anyway. Sarutobi sighs and goes to retort, but is interrupted by yet another council member. The clan head of the Nara clan, Shikaku. All of you are too troublesome. It is in my opinion that if Hokage-sama has so much faith in this boy, then we should as well. I mean, if the boy was truly a demon, then Konoha wouldn't exist anymore. PFF, what would you and your clan of lazy assess no Nara? Sitting around doing as little as you can. Like you would know how things work in a village that you deem to troublesome to deal with, says a woman with brown hair. Shikaku glares and says, troublesome, narrow-minded bitch. Why, you god. The woman didn't get to finish because one of the Anbu guards suddenly came blasting through the door and slams into the opposite wall. He falls to the ground unconscious. All activity ceases after that as the very subject of their heated conversation slowly walks into the room with his puppet and carrying 3 dead Hyugas. He was covered in blood and looking neutral as always. He drops the body he was carrying and has Fox Naruto drop the other 2 next to it. Hokage Gigi, says Naruto looking right at Sarutobi. The council was stunned and Hiyashi's eyes were as big as saucers. Sarutobi looks right into Naruto's cold blue orbs and says, "What is it, Naruto?" The boy wipes the blood off of his katana that sheaths it while one of Fox Naruto's tails relaxes after delivering the blow to the guard. He points to the bodies and says, "I think these three belong to you." Sarutobi could only nod. Naruto looks right at Hiashi and says, "And I kept the last one. I thank you for the gift." Hiashi snaps out of his shock and practically breaks the windows screaming, "What the hell do you mean, brat?" Naruto grins. It was a look that sent chills down everyone's spines as he has Fox Naruto re-strap its own sword on its back. His gaze never leaving Hiashi's. "I have gained a powerful new tool because of you and this council and I thank you for it." He then turns to leave. "Wait, boy!" screams the Hyuga head. Naruto pauses but does not turn around. "What is it, Hyuga Tem?" Hiashi glares so hard his Byakugan activates. "You will return Yoshino, now." Naruto looks up. "Oh, so Yoshino is her name. A pretty name for such a pretty woman. I'll make sure to remember her name." He then begins to walk out again. "Boy, did you not hear me?" Naruto says nothing. Hiashi reaches into his robes and pulls out a white kunai. "You will listen to your betters, demon." He chucks it hard before anyone who was not against Naruto could do anything. What happens next stuns the Hyuga clan head. Fox Naruto reaches up and plucks the kunai right out of the air before vanishing and reappearing in Hiashi's face with that kunai to his neck. Controlling Fox Naruto has become second nature to me. I always have a chakra string attached to him. I've gotten so used to this, that Fox Naruto is like a sixth sense. The puppet presses the kunai a little closer. I control this puppet out of instinct and reflex alone now. A really powerful defense. Attacking me will get you killed. Especially if you underestimate me, Hyuga Tem. He has Fox Naruto release the stunned Hyuga and leap back over to his side. And as for Yoshino-chan, she died swiftly. I assure you. He then turns to leave again. "Oh, and you'll only be losing shinobi if you keep sending assassins after me. I am not the helpless boy you can abuse anymore and I won't hesitate to end lives. Including yours if it becomes necessary." He smiles slightly at the old man. "Goodbye, Hokage Gigi." Naruto wait. Naruto pauses and turns to face Sarutobi. "Yes. I would like you to join the Ninja Academy again." "What?" yells the council. Naruto looks up and says, "I'll think about it. First I have to go and prepare Yoshino." Sarutobi nods. Naruto turns to leave but is stopped a third time. This time by the Inuzuka clan head Sume. "Uzumaki-san, if you don't mind me asking, how did you manage to kill those four?" Naruto looks up then at Sume with a smirk. "I trapped them in my training dojo where I gassed them with my paralyzing solution before I opened them up with my katana like a couple of cans of tuna." He then quickly exits, leaving a room full of shocked village council members and a smirking Hokage. Scene change. As Naruto was heading back to his home, he once again spots the Anbu woman. She was heading toward the Hokage tower looking deep in thought. He examines her a little closer this time because if he remembered correctly she was staring at his home. His eyes finally rest on her purple hair and he has a realization. "You are that Anbu," he says, causing her to snap her head in his direction. They lock eyes for a whole minute before Naruto turns and continues on his way. He had a new puppet to create after all and time was of the essence. Yugao on the other hand continued to stare at him until he vanishes into his home. She couldn't stop. Her heart was aching. "Naruto, I'm sorry," she whispers before body flickering away. What she didn't notice was that Naruto was looking at her through one of his windows with a special hearing-enhancing seal over his ear. All he wanted to do was confirm whether or not she was trying to kill him. He never expected to hear a genuine heartfelt apology. He smiles a bit and looks over at a jar. It had a perfect conditioned arm contained within it and was covered in preserving seals and embalming fluid. Hey, perhaps sparing her life was a good thing. he says as he pulls the ribcage of Yoshino apart and takes out the organs. And perhaps I'll take Hokage Gigi up on his offer. Scene change. Hiyashi explodes into Sarutobi's face with pulsating veins and a red face. Hokage-sama. How could you? How could you let that abomination waltz up in here after killing 4 members of my clan and be so disrespectful? How could you allow him to threaten us all so openly? I agree. Hokage-sama. Everyone here heard the boy say he won't hesitate to attack and kill us. That should be liable for execution, yells the woman in the red kimono. Shikaku and the Yamanaka clan head, Inoichi sigh. If he does decide to kill you, it would be your damn fault, says Inoichi. I agree. It is the ignorant people like you that do this to the boy. He has every right to be the way he is. What? Sarutobi clears his throat loudly to get everyone's attention. Once he has it, he speaks in an almost cold tone. Naruto Uzumaki is indeed a unique case. He has indeed threatened the council and anyone who crosses him wrongly. I hold no ill will toward him for that. There are several gasps. You all can do what you see fit, but I warn you now. Naruto Uzumaki is now officially under the protection of the Hokage himself and the Sarutobi clan. What? Hokage-sama. Enough. This is my decision. You have done enough to him already. I do this for the good of him and Konoha. Naruto will kill you all if no one puts a stop to this whole damn fiasco. The Naruto-hating council members could only stutter incoherent sentences and stare with huge eyes. Soon, Shikaku, Inoichi, and the Akamichi clan head Shuza rise to their feet and begin to leave. Naruto Uzumaki also has the protection of our clans. We have decided that it's too damn troublesome to waste time hating him for something he has no control over, says Shikaku. Hiyashi and the rest of the council begin to scowl, and the woman in the red kimono decides to get their last words in. You will protect that demon? Asks the woman. Always. It was the Yondaime's wish after all, says Shuza. Even as the boy murders innocent people and turns them into his dolls with his sick experiments. Asks Sarutobi's old teammate. If Naruto turns someone into a puppet, then they had it coming. Naruto has made it clear on his intentions. If you leave him alone, you need not worry, says Shikaku. I don't believe that. I refuse to believe that, says Hiyashi. Believe what you will, says Sum as she and the others exit the room. Sarutobi looks at the rest of his council and says, like I said, do what you will, but if you attack him and he cannot fight back, then you have 5 ninja clans to deal with. He bows and exits the room, hiding his smirk. Time skip. About 3 weeks later, Naruto was seen walking through the village with a new puppet following him around instead of Fox Naruto. This one stood proudly and arrogantly and had a slimmer figure than Fox Naruto. Long black hair with silver streaks flowed freely in the wind and a white kunai hung from its waist. Dressed in black and white robes and gifted with a set of beautiful pale lavender blank eyes was Yoshino. Naruto's first bloodline limit holding human puppet. A member of the esteemed Hyuga clan. The most powerful clan in Konoha. A clan whose bloodline limit is sought after by the Hidden Cloud village. Now, to get some instructions on the Jukin, says Naruto as he and Yoshino leap up to the rooftops. I can't have a useless tool after all. He has her draw her kunai to defend from any possible attackers. The village may be scared of him for the most part, but they were not cowards. They would attack him the first chance they get. He was reading a book titled, Konoha's Bloodline Limits and heading toward the Hyuga compound. A look of determination and sick excitement adorning his face. Sarutobi sat in his office with a smile as he read the somewhat messy letter from Naruto. If you ignored the blood spots and small chunks of wood and bone, then you could easily read it. Hokage Gigi, I thought about it, and I've decided to take you up on your offer. I will return to the Ninja Academy if only to learn a little bit more on ninjutsu and genjutsu. But know this. I won't hesitate to behead those ignorant teachers if they flip me too much shit. I know ninja are valuable in any shinobi village, but I refuse to put up with anyone's crap. Of course, Hokage Gigi, I won't go killing everyone for every little thing. I'm not that desperate for new puppets. I doubt that there's anyone there I could make into a useful tool anyway. I'll start tomorrow. Yours truly, Naruto Uzumaki. Greatest puppeteer ninja. P.S. If I do actually become a ninja for this village, then I will answer only to you. Sarutobi chuckles as he read the letter. He'd have to remember to have a talk with the boy to keep him from killing the teachers. He grabs a blank scroll and an ink brush. He had to let the academy know that there was a new student coming in. Even if it was already a month late. He just hoped that there wouldn't be too many problems. Scene change. The Hyuga clan was in an uproar. It had been 3 weeks since Naruto killed 4 Hyugas and had the nerve to make one of them his puppet. The council was not very happy to hear that part of Hiyashi's report. Naruto Uzumaki had control of the Juken. He possessed the Byakugan. It was inconceivable to them. The whole clan soon heard about what Naruto had done. Some were quite impressed with the boy. He had taken out 4 very powerful main branch members of the Hyuga and made the bloodline limit more or less his own. However, as many as there were people who now respected Naruto, there were about 10 times more who hated him. Hiyashi had banned anyone of the Hyuga clan from associating with him, and any who disobeyed his orders would be killed on the spot. The Hyuga council began searching for a powerful Hyuga in order to train he or she exclusively so they could kill Naruto. Hiyashi had made a speech 2 hours long explaining to the entire clan that Naruto, the Kyuubi monster incarnate, was stealing bloodline limits and murdering innocent people. He even told them how the demon has brainwashed the Akamichi, the Inuzuka, the Nara, the Yamanaka and the Sarutobi clans. He had told them how they had to train 3 times as hard in order to do this demon in the future. He had the Hyuga clan on high alert that day. But they were so caught up in their worry and fear that they didn't notice as 2 figures slunk their way toward the Hyuga scroll room. Naruto and his puppet Yoshino approached the locked wooden door of the Hyuga scroll room and smirked. This was too easy, he says as he disables the somewhat simple in his opinion traps that lined the door. After he was done, he picks the lock and walks in. The room was filled with scrolls. Naruto grins. He was in the heart of the Hyuga clan. He had access to all of the secrets of the Hyuga clan and was about to steal everything here. He pulls out an empty storage scroll and begins to draw the necessary seals. Who are you and what are you doing here? Naruto whirls around with his hand on his battle chain and sees a pair of Hyuga girls. One was about 8 years old and her eyes looked angry and intrigued at the same time. She had long dark brown hair and was dressed in a black Hyuga-style training outfit. Her face showed very little emotion. The other girl was the complete opposite. Her face showed numerous emotions and she looked unsure of herself. Fearful even. She has short dark blue hair and looked to be his age. She was dressed in a thick off-white jacket and black ninja pants. She was looking away from him as if afraid. He smirks slightly at this. She had every reason to be afraid of him. The younger girl notices his smirk and glares. Answer me or face the consequences. Naruto nearly laughs in this girl's face. Who was she to dish out threats? Was she that good or just full of herself? He mentally shrugs and gets to his feet. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and this clan has something I need. Naruto barely heard the older girl gasp. I see, says the younger girl. What is it you are searching for? Are you looking to learn how to use that puppet of yours to its full potential? Naruto smirks. This girl was more intelligent than a kid her age should be. You realize that you won't be able to utilize the Byakugan, she says. Naruto shrugs. It is not the Byakugan I care about. I need to learn the Juken and any other Hyuga fighting style. Your eyes' abilities are useless to me. The younger girl raises an eyebrow. I see. You wish to master the Juken through Yoshino, Since she is a puppet, she wouldn't be able to do the jukin if the controller does not know the proper movements. Exactly, says Naruto. Now if you have no more questions, I have little time. He crouches back down and continues drawing the seal on the scroll. But there is still a couple of problems, Uzumaki, says the girl. Naruto looks up at her. And what are those? He asks. The girl smirks and says, you cannot master the jukin if you cannot use the Byakugan. If you do not have the Byakugan, you do not have the ability to see the chakra coils or the tenketsu. Naruto looks up. I don't need to see the tenketsu in order to learn the movements for the jukin. So it is an irrelevant issue. The girl sighs and says, fine, and turns to leave. The older girl was still looking down at her feet and pushing her fingers together nervously. Come, Hinata. Father waits for us, says the younger girl in a firm but caring voice. Hinata nods and gives Naruto one last look before turning to leave. Good luck, Naruto-kun, she says in the faintest of whispers. Naruto ends in response, stunning the girl. Hinata, come on. We must not be late, says the younger girl as she pokes her head back into the room. Hinata nods, her face crimson and riddled with shock as she shuffles out of the door. The younger girl gave Naruto one last look before saying, 5 minutes, and then leaving. Naruto smirks. He wouldn't need that much time. Scene change. Hanabi Hyuga didn't really know why she was letting that boy get away with what he was doing. Perhaps it was a deep-seated respect after hearing what he is capable of. Or perhaps she was interested in whether or not he could really learn how to use a Hyuga puppet in the art of jukin. She shrugs as she flops down into her bed. It was in the past already and she had to prepare for the chaos that is sure to follow Naruto's actions. Hinata was lost in thought. Or perhaps she was spaced out as she usually was. Hanabi didn't really pay much attention anyway. She closes her eyes and sighs. Sometimes I wish I was not from such a prestigious clan. Scene change. Naruto walks into his room with a smirk and flops down onto his couch. He had just got back from the Hyuga scroll room and was feeling quite satisfied. He didn't even have to kill anyone to keep them quiet. He bites his thumb and opens up his storage scroll. Without a word he smears the blood on the seal and a large puff of smoke follows, revealing the contents of the Hyuga scroll room. He smirks. Time to get to work, he says to himself as he opens the nearest scroll. This was a scroll that explained a bit about the Hyuga clan and its origins. He tosses it aside a minute later. The history of the Hyuga clan interested him very little. He opens another scroll and sees that this one is a family tree. He also tosses this one aside. 5 hours went by and it was now late evening bordering on night. Naruto was slightly frustrated. All of these scrolls were useless to him. He sighs and opens on of the last 3 scrolls remaining. It was a ninjutsu scroll. He looks through it and sees 2 water techniques, a fire technique and a flower technique. He puts the scroll aside for later. He eyes the last 2 scrolls and smirks when he sees the labels. Hyuga style fighting. Jukin or the gentle fist. At last, he says as he seals up the rest of the scrolls. Scene change. An alarm was blaring. People were running around frantically trying to find an explanation to what the hell was going on. People were yelling and panicking, saying things like, they're gone. We've been robbed. It was chaos. Hiyashi's eyes were bulging with an enraged Byakugan. And he was close to strangling anyone who got too close to him. Only 2 people knew what exactly was the cause of the Hyuga clan's plight. Hinata and Hanabi sat in their rooms lost in their own thoughts about a certain blonde. Hinata didn't know what to think of the boy. She didn't really know him well and he completely vanished from the academy about a year ago. Like everyone else, she now knew of his current choice of attitude. She was scared of him a bit. He could effortlessly kill and transform someone into a puppet and his eyes were dead to the world. Void of all emotions and feeling, but at the same time revealed a deep void of pain and sadness. Hinata sighs and says, Naruto-kun, in a whisper. Hanabi didn't think much of the puppet user. She was intrigued when she heard he could turn people into puppets and was surprised when she found him in the scroll room getting ready to seal everything into a storage scroll, but his attitude didn't really bother her much. Nor did his morbid style of ninjutsu. If anything, she was fascinated by it. Puppetry was something she had never heard of. She closes her eyes and another pair distraught Hyugas rush past her room. Uzumaki, you interest me, she says. Scene change. Bah. The Hyugas are all nothing but fucking talk. Screams Naruto as he slams the Juken scroll into the wall behind him. He spent 2 hours studying that scroll and breaking down the instructions and fighting style, and he came to one conclusion. Hyugas are weak. He had discovered after reading that scroll that the Juken is the only thing that gives the Hyugas any form of fighting ability. That and the Byakugan. They rarely used ninjutsu or genjutsu or weapons for that matter and depended on Byakugan far too much. The Juken wasn't all that hard to memorize and they only had 2 special attacks, Kaiten and the 8 trigrams 64 palms. He copied the instructions for these 2 attacks along with the method for using chakra to do internal damage down and sealed the scroll up with the rest. The Hyuga ninjutsu scroll, however, sat at the end of his bed. If they don't want it, then I'll be glad to take it and use it for myself, he had said. He grabs the storage scroll and leaps out of his trap-rigged window and onto the ground below. The Hyugas can keep their useless junk, he says as he walks back toward the Hyuga manor. Scene change. It was night now and Yugao was still sitting in the one spot she had been since earlier that day. At the top of the Hokage Tower. She was lost in thought, all awareness of the world around her completely gone. Thoughts of Naruto still racing through her head. How was she going to approach him and apologize? Especially after all this time. How could she face him now? Hell, even if she did manage to gather the courage to face him, he'd probably just scoff and tell her to save her pointless apologies. After all, it's not like severe changes of heart like the one she had gone through happen all the time. If anything, Naruto was a paranoid but intelligent boy. He wouldn't just accept her without any questions. Then again, he did spare her that day. But perhaps it was merely so she could deliver his massage to Hokage-sama. She cringes at that. Had he really only spared her out of necessity? She was filled with so many unanswered questions. So much doubt. So much fear. Uncertainty. She sighs and looks up at the moon, ignoring the distant blare of the Hyuga Manor security alarm. Her hand unconsciously resting on her stump. Uzumaki-san, she mumbles before closing her eyes. I have to apologize for the wrong I have done you. Time skip. The next day Sarutobi awoke to a scene of all hell breaking loose. The area near the Hyuga compound was all chaos. Shouts and screams and people doing jutsus echoed all throughout the village, and a huge crowd was watching, jeering one opponent while cheering on the other. He practically flies over to the area and sighs at what he sees. Yeah, Hokage-sama is here to witness the demon's demise. Yells one villager only to have a Senbon jam into his neck and drop him. Courtesy of a glaring Naruto who dodges an attack from Hiashi at the same time. Shut it, fool, he says with a sneer. Hiashi was blind with fury and was attacking Naruto like a bat out of hell with Juken strikes and chakra flying all over the place. Naruto was smirking at the Hyuga clan head while evading his attacks with ease. Damn it, brat, screams the Hyuga as he lunges again at high speed. Naruto ducks under the attack, then back handsprings away. What the hell is going on here? And get that villager some medical attention, yells Sarutobi as Hiashi charges. This little abomination has broken into the Hyuga compound, yells Hiashi. Naruto punches Hiashi in the gut, getting a grunt form. The man then shoves him back. Quit your bitching, Hyuga. I have returned everything, so there was no harm. Hiashi charges and attacks with renewed vigor. I'll kill you, he screams. This causes Sarutobi to widen his eyes. And for good reason, because as soon as Hiashi mouthed those words, the look on Naruto's face completely transforms from a smirk to one of rage and fury. Better fighters than you have tried. He then bites his thumb and pulls back his sleeve, revealing a tattoo seal for Fox on his wrist while leaping further away from Hiashi. Fine then. If you want to fight to the death over something so trivial, so be it. He smears his bleeding thumb across the seal and Fox Naruto appears in all its nine-tailed Zanbeitu-wielding glory. Sarutobi gasps as Fox Naruto and the puppeteer both vanish at the same time. Clang. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. Everyone who was watching this fight couldn't help but marvel at the boy's speed. It was near Jonin level. A cloud of dust had kicked up, but one could clearly hear three people breathing. When it clears, everyone gasps. Naruto and Fox Naruto were right in Hiashi's face, and Sarutobi's right hand was holding Naruto's left wrist, which was gripping the katana whose tip was poking Hiashi's neck enough to draw a bit of blood. Naruto's right hand was holding a senbon to Sarutobi's kidney, but the pinky was extended and controlling Fox Naruto. The Hokage had obviously intercepted the blow, which was aimed for Hiashi's ribcage. Luckily, Sarutobi was wearing protective ninja gear and was not stabbed by the poisonous needle. Sarutobi's left hand was holding a katana and intercepting Fox Naruto's Zanbeitu would have cleaved the Hyuga right down the center. But the last things that truly had Hiashi gripped by fear were the puppet's nine tails. Each one was pointed directly at his chest, legs, and stomach, and each tail had split open, revealing poison-drenched blades mere millimeters from impaling him. Naruto glares at Hiashi with malice and cold eyes. He does not let up on his sword, nor does he struggle against Sarutobi. He just stares at Hiashi's blank lavender orbs. Hyuga Tem, I told you I have returned your scrolls. I merely needed to study your fighting style if I'm going to use Yoshino to her fullest potential. For some reason this causes Hiashi to laugh. As if you could master the Hyuga style to its full potential. You cannot use the Byakugan, and a Byakugan on a puppet is useless. Naruto presses his katana a bit further. You and your clan are a bunch of overcredited pompous weaklings. As I have said to the two girls yesterday, I do not need the Byakugan to use the Juken. I will master the Juken through Yoshino, then I will improve it. Take it beyond what you bunch of fools ever could. PFF, go ahead and try, demon. Naruto's eyes flash red for a second. Oh, I will, Hyuga Tem, and once I do, I'll have you groveling at my feet begging me to show you my techniques. Naruto struggles against Sarutobi's arm for a second, trying to press his blade further into Hiashi's neck. Enough, Naruto. Stand down, says Sarutobi. Naruto looks into the old Hokage's eyes for a second before his gaze softens. He relaxes Fox Naruto and withdraws his katana and steps back. Sorry, Hokage Gigi. He pauses for a second. But not for that Hyuga, he says. Sarutobi raises an eyebrow. Naruto smiles a bit and points to the hole near Sarutobi's kidney. Sorry for nearly stabbing you. He then turns to leave when Hiashi speaks up. Tell me, boy, how it was you were able to counter me so easily. Naruto smirks and says, I learned everything I know by reading scrolls. Studying your one fighting style was easy enough. He then reseals Fox Naruto and leaps away. Hokage-sama, are you just gonna let that monster go? Yells a villager. He's nothing but AD. Thwack. The man falls to the ground with a kunai jammed in the back of his head. Sarutobi sighs. Hiashi-san, I suggest you go and clean up. All of you villagers returns to your homes at once. The villagers do without any more comments. Sarutobi body flickers away, leaving behind a stunned Hiashi, a gaping Hanabi, a few unconscious Hyugas, a shivering Hinata, and a gasping branch house Hyuga of about 11 years old whose forehead sported a green seal. Hiashi snaps out of it and starts barking out orders. You there. Dispose of that corpse. You wake up those fools. You and you. Go check the scroll room. Make sure that Demon Boy was telling the truth. He then turns around and sees a frightened Hinata and a nervous-looking Hanabi. And you too. We need to talk. Scene change. The village was abuzz with talk about the demon doll maker invading the Hyuga clan and trying to kill Hiyashi. Naruto inwardly smirked as people shied away from him. It meant that he could get back to his home without any trouble or killings. He thought about the time and realized he only had an hour before he had to get to the ninja academy. Hopefully Hokage Gigi had informed them of his impending arrival. I wonder just how they'll react, he thought. Surely he would receive a lot of negative attention and the teachers would be less than happy to teach him a bit. He scoffs at that a little. There was very little they could teach him save for ninjutsu and genjutsu, and that was the reason why he was going. He knew that ninjutsu and genjutsu were essential to any ninja's career and he was severely lacking in that area. Weapons, puppetry, seals and taijutsu were great and all, but without the other two he felt incomplete. And Naruto hated that feeling. It made him feel weak. And besides, one cannot become the greatest ninja if he cannot master all form of the ninja arts. He arrives at his home and sighs when he sees the broken remains of two of his puppets and two trails of blood leading inside. Naruto sighs when he walks in and sees two dead Chunin with several poisoned Senbon needles sticking out of their backs and the puppet of a young woman hovering above them and prepared to throw more. Some people never learn, he thought as he grabs the two bodies. Those two puppets they destroyed will need to be replaced. Scene change. Sarutobi sighs heavily as he takes another swig of sake. Naruto was one problem after another. The boy did whatever he wanted and it irked the council to no end that he would do nothing about it. Sarutobi didn't fear Naruto, but he didn't bother to mess with the boy either. In his opinion, Naruto can act the way he wants. It's the least he could do after the way Konoha has treated him. He takes another drink and rolls up a scroll before tying it to a messenger bird's leg. Almost forgot to send this to the academy, he says with a bit of a slur. Scene change. Yugao Uzuki was relaxing in her home watching the television when there was a knock at her door. She sighs and get up. Yeah, I'm coming, she says as she opens the door. Hello Uzuki-san. Yugao instantly glares. What the hell do you want, Danzo? Danzo smirks and enters Yugo's home. He walks over and sits down on the couch. My Yugao, is that anyway to speak to your former captain? Yugao glares. I'll speak to you in whatever manner I see fit. Now why the hell are you here? Danzo grins and says, oh nothing really, I'm just here to talk to you about a certain blonde puppet using Jinchuriki. Yugo's eyes widen a bit and she says in a whisper, Naruto. That's right, Mr. Uzumaki Naruto. Konoha's puppet user. And a damn good one at that. Yugo scoffs. Konoha's my. Naruto serves no one in this village. Danzo looks up and says, perhaps you are right, but I did not come here to talk about who the Jinchuriki serves but whether, who he could be serving in the future. Please old man. It's true Yugo-chan. I have witnesses Naruto's skill and his potential is boundless. We must get him under our control. Yugo scoffs. Good luck with that. Danzo smirks as she touches the spot where her left arm used to be. You remember that day, do you not? The day the Kyuubi vessel stole your arm. Yugo scowls. That demon vessel's name is Naruto Uzumaki and you will address him as such while in my home. Danzo frowns a bit. Fine then. The day Naruto stole your arm changed, you did it not? What are you talking about? Yugo was getting angry now. Danzo smirks and says, your emotions came back that day. So what your point, old man? Danzo smirks and gets to his feet. Help me get the one you've grown emotionally attached to, or I'll send my root Anbu after him. Not even someone of his power can take them all on and win. He exits Yugo's home. Good day Yugo-chan. You have until he graduates from the Ninja Academy. Yugo's eyes were wide. She could only stare at her door where Danzo was. The threat kept playing over and over again in her head, and the worst part was that Danzo would actually do something like that too. He would carry through with his threat. Naruto was strong. That much was certain, but not even he could withstand an all-out attack from the root Anbu. Her eyes harden. I won't play by your rules, Danzo, she thought. I have to find Naruto. She then exits her home and takes off toward Naruto's place. Time skip 1 hour. The classroom was abuzz with excited talking and laughing as this year's academy students chatted with each other about the daily events of their home village. They were chatting for about 20 minutes before two men finally walked in and told them to be quiet. One was a darker-skinned man with a scar across his nose and a pineapple-style hairdo, while the other had shoulder-length silver hair. Both of their faces were kind and gentle but held a lot of authority in the classroom. Iruka and Mizuki looked at the students, proud that Konoha was raising so many promising young ninja. They felt honored to teach them. Alright class, listen up. Today we are going to be studying the history of other shinobi villages. There was a bit of groaning from the students, but Mizuki quickly silenced it. Now children, do not worry, it's not as bad as it sounds. Sensei, you always say that. Yells a young Inuzuka boy. Yeah, what's up with that? Yells another boy. The two teachers sweat drop as the class explodes into protests. Hey, listen up. This knowledge is also vital to being a ninja. So pay attention. The class quiets down after a couple more minutes. Now, as I was saying, the world consists of tap tap tap. What now? Says Iruka, causing Mizuki to chuckle. Iruka makes his way over to the window and opens it. A messenger bird sops in and lands on the desk. It's from Hokage-sama, he says as he takes the scroll from the bird's leg and opens it. What's it say, sensei? Asks a young Akamichi. Iruka smiles and says, it appears we have a new student on his way here. He reads the scroll a bit more. It says that this new student has trained in solitude for a while and needs to learn a bit more on ninjutsu and genjutsu. What's his name? Asks a pink-haired girl. Iruka reads further, then drops the scroll with a gasp. Oh no, it's... Before he could finish, the door to the classroom opens and a reasonably short blonde kid with 3 whisker marks on each cheek steps in. His arms were crossed and his pants and shirt were bright orange. He had a katana, a spear and a battle chain on him and a tattered blue open cloak. Everyone in the classroom gets one good look at the boy and recoil in a bit of fear. Only one person had the courage to speak in the presence of this boy. He was a young Uchiha boy who looked just as emotionless as the blonde before the classroom. He utters 2 words and 2 words alone. Words that would soon send the classroom into disarray and chaos, for they too knew of what this boy is capable of. Uzumaki Naruto, says the young Uchiha. Naruto was never a guy that reveled in the terror of others, nor did he ever actively seek to terrorize those who have not wronged him yet, but he had to admit to himself as he looked upon the fearful faces of the students before him that it felt pretty liberating to some degree. Of course, there were still the few that were boldly facing his presence without any hint of fear, and he felt a bit of respect for those 4. The Uchiha didn't surprise him much. Of course, the boy didn't fear him. He was an Uchiha after all, and their arrogance was as great as the Hyugas. The boy was staring right into Naruto's eyes as if trying to size him up. No doubt thinking the stories about him are overemphasized. He scoffs slightly at that. On night in my home would scare his shitless. The next was the Nara boy. Naruto was amused by every member of this clan. They were all highly intelligent, but some of the laziest bunch of people he had ever come across. Even now this boy was looking at him with half-closed and uncaring eyes that said, just let me sleep and I'll leave you alone. He shifts his gaze over to the boy sitting at the back of the room. Sunglasses and a high collar covered his face. The Aburame clan had interested him greatly a while back. After reading a bit about their abilities in his book about Konoha's clans, he took the liberty of observing the clan as the members went about their business. He had been caught every time, but was surprised when they didn't brutally attack him but instead seemed to give him pointers on his stealth. The last boy intrigued him because he was staring at Naruto with curiosity and a bit of hostility. He has tan skin and reddish-pink shoulder-length hair. His eyes were mismatched colors, one brown and the other green. He looks back at the two frozen teachers and speaks. I'm sure Hokage Gigi has informed you of my arrival. Iruka nods slowly with a guarded look. Yes, we just received the message right before you arrived. I welcome you to our class, Naruto. Naruto nods a bit and heads over to the class. He smirks as the students shy away from him and begin to whisper among themselves. It's the puppet boy. I know. They say his house is so riddled with dangerous traps that not even a squad of Hyugas could survive trying to break in. It's true. It's also true that he turned a Hyuga into one of his puppets. Is it really a good idea to let him be here? I mean, look at him. Let's just stay out of his way. I'm with you on that one. Naruto couldn't help but smile a bit. At least the younger generation had enough common sense not to mess with him. He takes a seat next to the Uchiha and waits patiently for Iruka to begin his lessons. Scene change. Yugao sighs in frustration as she leaps over another house. Of all the times to virtually vanish off of the face of the elemental nations, why did Naruto choose today of all days? She looks around almost frantically. Danzo's threat hung over her like an ornament of dark mockery. She was worried for Naruto, although some part of her told her that she shouldn't be. After all, this is the boy whose trap-setting skills and knowledge of poisons borders on Sannin level. Naruto, I have to find and warn you, she says as she lands on the ground in the central marketplace. Warn Naruto of what? Yugao spins around and sees none other than Sarutobi looking at her with a raised eyebrow. Yugao bows. Hokage-sama, I didn't expect to see you here, she says with a voice full of surprise. Sarutobi chuckles and says, even I deserve a bit of downtime. Now, what's this about Naruto? Yugao looks up and says, Danzo of Root is after him. Sarutobi looks up. I see. Well, follow me, I know where he's at right now. Yugao breathes a sigh of relief and follows her leader towards the ninja academy. Scene change. Naruto was disappointed. The academy didn't really teach any ninjutsu or genjutsu, and that's all he cared about. He already knew most of Konoha's history and the clans of Konoha, so he really didn't pay a whole lot of attention. He instead pulled out his human anatomy book and started reading. His knowledge of the human body was very impressive. If he so desired, he could become an amazing medical nin. Class had just ended and the students were heading out. There were still whispers about him and the two teachers were still guarded around him. He paid them little attention. He stopped caring what others thought of him a year ago. What is that monster doing here? Naruto turns around and is met with the hate gazes of the parents of the students. Get out of here, demon boy! Yells a man. Naruto sighs and secretly draws a poison-tipped Senbon needle. Enough. Leave Naruto alone of face punishment from the Hokage. Naruto turns around and sees Sarutobi and an Anbu had just arrived. The people back off, but not before glaring at the puppet user and telling their children to stay away from him. Naruto looks back up at Sarutobi and says, thanks, but you know I didn't need your help. Sarutobi sighs. Yes, I know, but I can't have you injuring people in front of their own children. Naruto scoffs. Like I care. Sarutobi sighs again. Anyway, I have something important to tell you. Or rather, Yugao-chan here does. At the mention of her name, Yugao removes her mask and looks directly into Naruto's eyes. Naruto raises an eyebrow in slight surprise. Alright then, follow me, he says to the two ninja. There might be a few nosy eyes around that I don't want spying on us. In the bushes, the Uchiha and the tan-skinned boy flinch. Sarutobi nods, also knowing who was present, and places his hand on his shoulder. Where to? He asks. Naruto smirks and says, my place. Sarutobi and Yugao look at each other before vanishing with Naruto. They appear at the doorstep of Naruto's home a minute later and have to duck as two Chunin suddenly lunge from the roof. Naruto does a few finger movements and the puppets return to their posts. Sorry about that, Anbu-san. I still trust you very little, so I have not added you to the non-enemies list on my eyed seals. Yugao merely nods. Naruto approaches the stairs with Sarutobi and Yugao close behind him and eventually reach the door marked Uzumaki. He channels a bit of chakra into the door and pushes it open. Unlike the Hyugas who were dragged down to his underground dojo by one of his many ingenious traps, the door merely opens, revealing a small apartment room. Decorated in puppets' parts, tools and jars of body parts. Yugao and Sarutobi look around a bit grossed out by the morbid settings of Naruto's home. It reminded him all too well of his old student. He points to the couch and says, "Sit." They do, and Naruto flops down into a rocking chair and grabs up a puppet torso and begins to tinker with it. "Now what was it that you wanted to tell me?" he asks after a minute. Yugao clears her throat. "Uzumaki-san." Naruto raises an eyebrow at her. She gets her scruples together and continues. "Danzo of Root Anbu is after you." Naruto scoffs. "Root Anbu, huh? You know about them?" asks Sarutobi. Naruto shrugs. "A little, but not a whole lot. A couple of the ninjas who have died here were once part of the Root Anbu, so I know a bit about them. They are a secret branch of Anbu. The more ruthless individuals, and this Danzo is their leader." Yugao nods. "And this Danzo wants me under his control, no doubt." "That is precisely it, Uzumaki-san. Danzo has instructed me to convince you to join his Anbu division or be eliminated by him." Naruto looks up, then glares at Yugao. "Tell this Danzo that he is going to die. No one threatens my life." He stands up and looks her dead in the eye. "I answer only to Hokage Jiji. No one else. If this Danzo wants so badly to control the Jinchuriki of Konoha, then he better come at me himself and try and force me." Yugao goes to say something else, but Sarutobi interrupts her. "Naruto, don't underestimate Danzo. He is powerful." Naruto nods. "I underestimate no one. The day Danzo sends his Anbu after me will mark the day of his death." "How long do I have?" "Until the day you graduate from the Ninja Academy," says Yugao. Naruto stands up. "Fine then." He heads into a back room, and Sarutobi and Yugao could hear numerous clicking sounds and the clinking of metal and weapons. Just as Yugao was going to ask Sarutobi what Naruto was doing, the blonde returns with a large bundle in his arms. He looks at the two ninja in front of him as if surprised that they are still there. "Naruto, what is that?" asks Sarutobi. Naruto drops the bundle and causes Yugao's eyes to widen. The bundle unravels and reveals a new puppet. This one was huge. At least 7 feet tall and had pitch black skin. It had the body of a very muscular man. One arm was covered in a huge gauntlet and a foot-thick giant clock's gear. The other arm wasn't connected to the body yet and still looked pretty normal. The upper half of its face was covered in a thick steel Roman-style helmet, and snow-white hair sprouted from underneath the helmet. It was dressed in a tattered black kilt and a thick white sash that went from its left shoulder diagonally across the chest and around the right hip before coming back up across the back. A huge feathery black wing and 2 metallic tentacles were placed next to the puppet, and so were numerous canisters decorated with seals and kanji for different elements. He grins and returns to the room, returning a few minutes later carrying a shield that was twice as tall and as wide as the boy, and a double-bladed battle axe that was also nearly twice as tall as he was. The shield was triangle-shaped and had a golden outline. The center was decorated with a golden fox head, and the rest of the shield was black. The axe blade was black and the staff part was gold with a design of a nin-tailed fox lunging at something toward the blade. Perfect weapons for a warrior of this new puppet's stature. He drops the items next to the puppet and grins at Sarutobi and Yugao. "Meet my newest puppet. 2 months in the making. An original Uzumaki design. Oni Tenshi. Demonic Angel." Sarutobi and Yugao could only gape at Naruto, who smirks. "Human puppets are not the only puppets I know how to make." And to prove his point, he unseals Fox Naruto and has it look at Yugao. "You say Danzo will come at me the day of my graduation. Fine then. I'll use that time to prepare. He kneels down next to Oni Tenshi and picks up the disconnected arm of the huge puppet. Hokage Jiji. Do you know of anyone who can teach me ninjutsu and genjutsu? Someone I won't end up killing would be preferable. Sarutobi looks up as images of Sume, Inoichi, Shuza and Shikaku dance through his mind, but before he could voice his thoughts, Yugao speaks up. I would love to teach you Uzumaki-san. Naruto looks at her with a critical eye. Although he heard her apologize that one day he still was guarded. He doesn't throw out his trust foolishly. And why would you want to teach me Anbu-san? Aren't you the one whose arm I have taken? Yugao nods slowly. Naruto stands back up and approaches the woman. He looks deep into her eyes, a mere 5 inches apart. Yugao quickly became lost in Naruto's eyes. Eyes of the deepest blue she had ever seen. Eyes of a boy who has long since stopped caring about the world. Eyes of one who has dealt with a soul-gripping sadness. She felt something build up in her. A deep feeling in her stomach. At that moment all she wanted to do was embrace Naruto in a hug and comfort him forever. She refrained at the risk of getting jammed in the neck by a poison-tipped Senbon needle. Naruto, as if sensing Yugo's emotions, takes his eyes off of her and looks up. What is your name? I have seen you on several occasions and yet I do not know your name. Tell me Anbu-san and I will allow you to train me. Yugao nearly smiles happily and she gets to her feet. None of them had noticed that Sarutobi had left with a smile. My name is Yugao Azuki. Former member of Root Anbu. Instigator of the attack that changed you, a woman who is deeply and severely sorry for what she has done to you, Naruto. Yugao ends her sentence with a deep bow. Naruto approaches again and lifts her chin with his fingers to look into her tear-brimmed eyes. Anytime someone should be bowing to me is when they are either begging for mercy before I kill them or because I control them. He has Yugao stand back up and is a bit surprised to notice that she is only about a foot taller than he is. I am not killing you and you are not under my control. Therefore never bow to me, Azuki-san. Yugao didn't know what to do. The way Naruto had said that sounded almost number. It definitely wasn't that. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto nods. Now I'm sure in order to teach me ninjutsu you need 2 hands, am I correct? Yugao nods. It's okay, Naruto. We'll figure something out. Naruto grins. I already have the solution to your problem. Yugao looks at him confused. Naruto merely smirks and vanishes into his bedroom. He returns a minute later holding a jar. The jar was full of yellow liquid and glowing with numerous preservative seals. Yugao widens her eyes when she sees what this jar was preserving. My arm. Correct, Yugao-san. The day I took your arm I kept it. It was also the same reason why you are still alive today. That day I found out about the Kyuubi and asked that group of dumbass villagers and shed some of my first tears. I saw your eyes. Eyes of a person that felt no hatred for me, no emotion at all, in fact. I let you live because I felt you could redeem yourself. Regain your emotions as I lost mine. Yugao gasps. I spared you because I didn't want to kill you. It's that simple. He raises the jar to her. I can reattach your arm in the span of an hour. Would you like me to do so? Yugo's body moved on its own without her consent. It just reacted. That is how Naruto Uzumaki found himself in a bone-crushing hug from Yugao Azuki. Scene change. Sarutobi smiles as the image fades from his crystal ball. Things were finally beginning to look up. At least that's what he thought. He knew Naruto was probably never going to return to the way he was, but at least someone was finally there for him. He just hoped Naruto would be ready for Danzo. Perhaps the 4 other shinobi clans on his side would get involved. He sighs and decides not to think about it for now. Besides, he had a huge stack of paperwork to get signed. Scene change. Sai calls Danzo. A second later, a young man seemingly melts from the shadows. How may I serve you? Asks Sai in an emotionless voice. I want you to keep an eye on one Naruto Uzumaki. The puppet user. Yes. He shows great potential. I want to observe him. Keep track of his movements and make sure Azuki is doing her job. Sai nods but then asks another question. Are you even sure Azuki is going to cooperate? Danzo glares. She had better if she knows what's good for her. Now go. Do not get caught and do not try and enter Uzumaki's home. Sai raises an eyebrow. Danzo sighs and says, Uzumaki's home is riddled with traps so advanced they took our 4 highly trained Hyugas and numerous others over the past year. If you enter his home you will be killed. Ink drawings or not. Sai nods the bows. Now go. Hi Danzo-sama, says Sai before vanishing back into the shadows. Scene change. Yugao sat on the couch and watches mesmerized as Naruto practices with Yoshino. The puppet was moving in patterns far more graceful than anyone living could move. Naruto was a prodigy of the puppet technique. That much was glaringly sure. His weapon skills were also really great and so was his taijutsu and seal making. She watches as the Hyuga puppet twirls gracefully on one foot, producing chakra streamers that glowed blue in the room. She flexes her left arm and smiles in Naruto's direction. She still didn't know how he reattached it so well. She remembers him saying something about tiny chakra strings but that was it. Yugao-san, how is your arm feeling? Asks Naruto suddenly. Yugao looks at the blonde as he continued to practice with his puppet and says, it feeling great Naruto. I can finally move it with ease now. Naruto looks at Yugao and says, are you ready to teach me? Yugao inwardly laughs. Although Naruto was calm and collected on the outside, she could detect a bit of anticipation hidden in his voice. Of course Naruto. Whenever you are. Naruto pauses in his movements then seals Yoshino into his arm. Hold on, he says before walking into his room. He returns a few seconds later holding the jutsu scroll he stole from the Hyuga clan. There is a technique I wish to learn in this scroll, he says simply as he makes his way outside. Yugao follows the blonde and asks him where they were going. Naruto walks down the hall a bit and opens the stops at a door that was 4 doors away from his apartment. He opens it and steps in, Yugao close behind him. Yugao was awed at the sheer amount of traps that Naruto had set up. There was no way in hell someone was getting very far into this home without getting killed. Yugao had never seen such elaborate, well thought out and dangerous traps. Add to the fact that Naruto's puppets patrolled the place constantly and attacked anyone Naruto deemed an enemy without mercy and without tiring, and it kind of unnerved her a bit. They made their way down a slanted hallway for what seemed like 2 hours before Naruto finally speaks. We're here, he says as he opens a door marked Dojo. He steps in and signals for Yugao to follow. She obeys and widens her eyes at the sight. This dojo had everything needed in order to train. Weights, weapons, targets, a post, numerous open scrolls, a few books and numerous instructions for different puppet techniques. There was also a small letter taped to the wall right in the center. It was from Sasori of the Red Sands. A taunt to Suna. Naruto turns to looks at Yugao and says, so what must I learn first? Scene change. Sasuke Uchiha. A boy with principles. A boy with nobility. With the respect of the entire village. A boy who in his eyes could have no rival. Yet this Uzumaki Naruto was treading all over those beliefs. He grits his teeth a bit. Naruto was talked about all over Konoha. He was quite famous. But not in a positive way. His very name struck fear into the hearts of some of the villagers and inspired angry mobs in others. Sasuke felt a bit of jealousy for this boy. He was a dead last student when he used to attend the academy. Now he was strong enough to kill Hyuga Jonins with traps alone and turn them into puppets. He was stronger than him. Sasuke grits his teeth. He had to train harder. Naruto was not going to surpass him. Not ever. Scene change. Tsuchi was an orphan. A boy of unknown origins. The only family he ever had was his older sister. She had gone missing a few years back though. He didn't like this Naruto. Didn't like him one bit. The guy acted like he was above everyone else. Yes, he heard the stories. He heard the rumors, he had even heard some of the villagers call the boy the Kyuubi. He didn't care. He saw Naruto as a stuck-up little brat who needed to get over himself. He huffs as he punches the training post for the 400th time. He had other things to worry about, like getting stronger and locating his sister eventually. His reddish-pink hair swaying in the wind. Scene change. Neji Hyuga sat in his room and pondered. Never in his life had he seen someone fight a Hyuga so effortlessly, and yet this blonde boy a year younger than himself had utterly humiliated the entire clan. He sighs. He had training to do. Perhaps he would listen to the words this Naruto had said to Hiashi and modify the Juken. Who knows? Perhaps it was possible to take it to all new heights and defeat the fate of the Hyuga clan. Time skip. It was 10 at night when the doors opened and out stepped Yugao and Naruto. Naruto looks at the Anbu woman and says, "I thank you for today's lesson. I look forward to tomorrow." Yugao smiles and grabs Naruto in a hug. He would never get used to that and had to fight the reflex of jamming a kunai in her ribs every time she had done it, and counting now it was the 6th time. He wondered why she was suddenly so affectionate. Perhaps it was her way of being grateful for him accepting her apology and giving her arm back. He didn't know, nor did he really care. Yugao lets go of him and says, "I look forward to it as well, Naruto. Take care." She then vanishes. Naruto smirks and walks over to his apartment room. "I've been taking care since I could walk," he says in an amused voice before closing his door. He didn't notice that Yugao was still there, sitting on his roof and smiling sadly. Her heart ached. She was in pain for the way Naruto was. Because of this village, because of her. Naruto. Scene change. Sai materialized in front of Danzo bowing. "Well?" asks the old war hawk Anbu. Sai clears his throat before speaking. "I seems that Yugao-san is growing attached to him." Danzo raises an eyebrow. "Not only that, but it seems that she is training him in the arts of both ninjutsu and genjutsu. And Uzumaki actually let her get that close to him. It appears so, Danzo-sama." Danzo looks up and rubs his chin. "This is most interesting. Anything else?" Sai nods and says, "Actually yes. Uzumaki has returned Azuki's arm to her and didn't seem to care when she embraced him." Danzo looks Sai in the eye. Is the boy growing soft? "Not in the least, sir. He just trusts he